Hello ladies and gents, everything in between and outside of it. I'm Sophia and welcome back to a new video. I thought I'd bring back my old intro since a lot of people were missing it. I can't promise I'll do it every video because it is a mouthful, but I thought I'd do it for today's video. So today we're just doing a cutesy little February wrap up. As always, I will have all the books that I read this month next to me on my TBR card, and then I'll just quickly do a review. So I did this in my last monthly reading wrap up and I actually really enjoyed it. So I keep track of all my reads in my book journal, and I've decided to kind of write down my thoughts, and I keep it with me while I review the book, so I don't actually get off track. A lot of people just do this in their notes, but I was like, if I already have a book journal, I might as well talk about them. This will be on Instagram, so if you want to check that out, go check that out, or TikTok, probably both. This was my little spread, and I made this new thing where I kept track of all the books I read in like a little calendar. Would you guys like to see just vlogs and like week vlogs of me with like exams? Because I was maybe thinking of doing that, and if you guys want to see that, then I can do that. I read 12 books and 11 of them were physical. One was for school and that one was not physical because I don't have it, because why would I? The first book that I read in February is The Binding Room. This was a highly anticipated read for me because this is the sequel to The Jigsaw Man, and The Jigsaw Man, I give a 5-star. That was like in my top 5 reads of last year. It was such a good book. I kept putting this off, I think because I was scared that it wasn't going to hit as much as The Jigsaw Man. Was it a 5-star? No. It was a 4.5. That's still a really good read, and I also kind of wanted to read this because only a week before I'm off my book buying ban, the third one is coming out, so I didn't want the third one to come out and then first have to read this one, because then you're not as excited. I feel like it was more complex than the Jigsaw Man in my opinion, because I don't know, this was like a whole new case, and I feel like in the Jigsaw Man you kind of half got thrown into it. It did take me a while to read, so it took me I think a bit over a week, which is unusual for me. I did listen to this as an audiobook as well, some parts, and I think I just like, the audiobook was so good. First of all, so good. I listened to it on Next Story as always. If you want to get a free trial, use my code for the first 45 days off. Gives me a little bit of coin as well, so the audiobook made me feel even more connected to everyone. It was just so good, and I think I just read it so slow because I didn't want it to be over. So I will just quickly read what I wrote here so you can get those thoughts as well. It was a bit slow at the beginning, but that's probably also because I didn't want this book to be over, so I took my time to read it. The case was so crazy and intertwined. Crazy vocabulary. I mainly enjoyed it because the characters felt like a family and I felt so connected to everyone. Some books I did read physically, but I gave to my grandma. If you saw my January wrap up, you know that's something I do. The next book that I read is Truly Darkly Deeply, and I actually filmed this for a video that I ended up never posting. I have that quite a lot where I am gonna film a video and I'm filming the video and the video is going so bad that I just scrap it completely, but then you're stuck in the middle of a book. And basically I was trying to do again Instagram pics of the books that I read for like a week or something, and I was in a big ass slump, and then when I put the books that I might want to read on Instagram for you guys to choose, then I actually, by the time that I had to read one of those, I didn't want to read either of them anymore, which was kind of a problem anyway, but this one got picked. And at that point I read I think 50 pages and I was so uninterested. And I really couldn't like be bothered, but then I was like, because I hate DNFing books, I decided to push through. I also wanted to push through because I'd seen so many good things about this book on TikTok, on Instagram, just in stores where like, you know when sometimes they do like reviews in the store, and I just seen so many good things about this book and I was like, I feel like I'm missing out here. I should really try. Basically, the back says 12-year-old Sophie and her mother Emily Rose moved to London from Massachusetts where they meet the charismatic Maddie Melgren, who quickly becomes an intrinsic part of their lives. But as the relationship between the two adults fractures, the serial killer begins targeting young women with a striking resemblance to Amelia Rose. When Maddie is sent down for multiple murder. It says multiple murder. That's not right. Am I going crazy, or is that like grammatically technically correct? Questions remain as to his guilt, questions which ultimately destroy both women. Nearly 20 years later, Sophie receives a letter informing her Maddie is dying and wants to meet. It looks like Sophie might finally get the answer she craves, but will the truth set her free or bury her deeper? The thing is that the perspective kept changing. Like not the timeline, that was it. So you kept going like back in time, and then you would be present, and you're waiting for this moment that she goes to see her dad in prison, right? Well, not her actual dad, it's like her stepdad, or not legally, whatever. And she's like, I was texting my boyfriend like, I'm on page 100 and she still hasn't gone. She goes in like the second last chapter, because first you're finding out this entire story. And to be honest, towards the end I was also kind of intrigued, because I was like, well, what's the truth, what isn't? Because at that point I wasn't sure either what the truth was. But then when it was revealed, I was like, oh, fun. But I just had to wait 300 pages for this just to get the explanation of what was going on. And I felt like this was a much more character driven book rather than plot driven, and I feel like that bothered me a little bit, because I didn't know that going into it. I mean, maybe that's my fault, but like, it was just not what I was expecting. I was really disappointed, because I've had this book for a good while. But what I wrote in my little journal is, almost DNF this in the beginning. I wasn't sure if I should, because I'd seen so many good things about this. Towards the end it definitely got better, but still wasn't as satisfying as I'd like it to be. If you're a domestic thriller lover, it might be better. But I was mainly bored. The next book I gave to my grandma, but it's See Them Run. Again, in the beginning I struggled. I feel like that's just like automatically in every beginning of each book you will most likely struggle, especially like, I mean, not if it's a series, and I feel like with romance books maybe not either, but I think everything else you will probably struggle. I love listening to the audiobook, and since most of the audiobooks were really good quality, and this kind of like all of us, because I just finished The Binding Room and that felt so professional, and this just kind of in the beginning sounded to me like this was being recorded on a phone in an empty room. That feeling quite quickly left. I feel like it was just because there was such a big contrast, or I don't know, maybe I was overstimulated, maybe our senses were up. Quickly after that I actually got really into the story, because it was such a cute book. It's basically the first book also again in a detective series, and this takes place in Scotland, so also in the beginning of the audiobook I was a bit lost because I had to get used to listening to the accent. But this was so good. Kind of the thing that I always like in detective stories, if there's multiple dead people. So if it's like, if it's a story, if it's like a serial killer story or just a killer story, give me multiple dead people. Make it a serial killer story. Because if it's just one death you are investigating the entire book, it gets a bit boring in my opinion, because there's not that much you can do with that. There's not like a crazy link that you can make either, like if like something you could like create as an author, in my opinion. But this had 3 dead people, and again this has such a homey family feel. I also really enjoyed the characters. I grew really close to them, and this is also a series. It already has, I think, like 8 books or something, and I'm definitely gonna look for the second one. The note that I wrote is, this has such a family feel to it. I will definitely continue this series. It was exciting, thrillery, entertaining, and not boring. I love the characters and the case as well. I had a bit of trouble in the beginning because the audiobook bothered me a little, but eventually I really got into it. Also, all these reviews, I will be posting them on my Instagram so you can actually read them if you don't understand my talking. I am aware that I often mumble and speak really quickly, so my apologies. Next one, we're already on book number 4. So, fun little funky story. I had holidays in February, right? And my boyfriend was in Australia, and I was like, I really need to start planning what I'm going to do for YouTube when I have my exams, because obviously I don't have time to film a video a week. So I was like, I am gonna try for 3 days to read 2 books a day. So in 3 days reading 6 books, because every day I had to film a different video that I then film now and then edit later and post later. So that's why I read so many books. Also because I filmed a readathon. If you haven't watched that, go, I don't know what corner it is, but go watch. Anyway, next book, book number 4, Case Sensitive. And this is the 3rd book in the Cassie Raven series. And I kid you not, I posted on my Instagram, the author replied, and I asked her straight up, is there gonna be another book because I need more? She was like, yeah, I just handed it in, and I literally was like, oh my god. So I threw in a little, yeah, if you ever plan on doing things like arcs, I'm available. No, because I read the first book in August. These are the other 2, but I think this was definitely my favorite so far. I think because you really know the characters now and you connect with them, and it's just so good. It's about a mortuary technician, and basically she kind of feels like the dead can speak to her. Not really, like they don't actually speak to her, but she just knows when something's wrong. And this was 100% my favorite so far. I'm not going to talk too much about these books that I read in those videos. I still want you to watch the videos. They'll be up like end April, start March, so you have to wait a little bit, just a little. I just don't want to like spoil those videos for you. I will just tell you the rating. I rated this a 4.5. Then I filmed another video, of course. So this was the next day. So what I did successfully do is that I would, in those 2 days, I finished at least 1 book a day. So I feel like at least I did something. I read Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I actually enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. So this has been on my shelf for quite some time, and I just had like no intention of picking it up anytime soon because I just haven't been really reading romance. When I did, I was so happy because I feel like this was a lot more than a simple romance. This was super cute. I don't know, this was just really adorable. And I gave this a 3.75. Then the next book is also at my grandma's house, but that is Don't Let Go by Harlan Coben. And this was again for another video. I was pleasantly surprised. So I have read a Harlan Coben book before. I read Shelter, but that was a YA book. And I have basically been feeding my boyfriend Harlan Coben books because they're easy to read. The two that I have read, I read super quickly. I was actually really intrigued. This was a very diverse mix of character and plot driven. I'd say I was definitely there for the plot. The plot was really interesting. The ending, I was a bit in a shock, but I definitely recommend. And I gave this a good 4-star. Readathon books time. So if you haven't watched my readathon, pause this video. Click on that one in a new tab, and then when you've watched that one, come back. So the first book that I read in my readathon is The Family Game. So I got this from Book of the Month literally so long ago, I think like over a year now. And I have tried to read it I think a couple of times now, like maybe 2 or 3 times. I never really got like fully into it. It never really hooked me. And then I saw that Next Story had a audiobook. As always, because Next Story is just babe. No, and I just really wanted to pick this up finally because I've had it for such a long time. And Next Story helped me finally get through it. No, the audiobook actually really helped me because I remember I'd read like the first 40 pages and actually none of that was stored in my brain. And I did actually like it, but the ending just felt like nothing crazy like I could have expected it. It felt very predictable. It didn't feel like anything crazy. But yeah, I ended up giving this 3 stars. I just was disappointed, so I tried to read this a couple of times already, but I just couldn't get into it, so I thought maybe the audiobook would help. I think that if I didn't have it, I wouldn't have come this far. The twist at the end was okay, but not bad, but it wasn't something I had never seen before, and it just didn't hit well. Then the next book that I read in my readathon is Close to Home. So I actually own 2 other books by her. One is another part of this series, and then it's just like a standalone, and I really wanted to read this one because I wanted to see if I wanted to continue the series. I do. This was really good. This was basically about this girl that goes missing at her family's barbecue, and basically whenever a young child goes missing, it's almost always somebody that you know. And it was really fun because the book basically has a lot of different formatting. So every now and then you'll get some like tweets or a here, like the interviews are conducted like that. You will get a news blog. The font was also really big, which was really nice. And I did have a really good time with this. The only thing is that when I finished the book and then I found out a little plot twist at the end, because I really like when authors add a final plot twist on like the last page or in the last chapter, like when you think you've had it but then you haven't. You know, it's like my favorite little thing that authors can do. And it happened. The only problem is that I didn't know who the person was, and I was like, huh? And then I looked it up on Goodreads, and then I was like, oh, that makes a little sense. That's really weird. But if I had maybe just paid a bit more attention, I would have known that. Maybe it's my fault. Maybe it's the author's fault. Probably my fault. I don't pick up on small stuff like that. Just maybe when you read it, pay attention to all the characters, okay? And then the next book that I read in my readathon is The Housemaid's Secret. I've had this for a really long time. I just hadn't picked it up because I had read the prologue multiple times and I just never continued with it. I think maybe because I was a bit scared that I wouldn't like it as much as the first book, so the Housemaid. This had me really hooked. Like any other Frida McFadden book, I went through it so quickly. I'm unsure which one I prefer. This one does have a lower rating than the other one. I don't know exactly, but I know it's lower than the other one. But I don't know which one I like prefer. But this was really, really good. Like if you have this on your shelf and you still haven't read it, please go pick it up because I shouldn't have waited this long. And what I wrote to my journal, I was nervous to read this because I was too scared it wouldn't live up to the first book, but it definitely did. I'm still unsure which one I prefer, but this one made me feel confused, scared, and nervous. It was so good, and of course a quick read. I know I repeat myself a lot of times when I read out the little thing, but I feel like sometimes it says things I haven't said before. The last book that I read in my readathon is What Lies Between Us, and I actually got this from my friend for my birthday. So I've been actually wanting to read it since my birthday because I really wanted to tell her what I thought of it, because I'd seen it all over TikTok, people giving it like a super high 5 stars, and what I will tell you, what the actual fuck. I am concerned for this man's health. That you can come up with shit like this. I wanted to read The One by him as well for a really long time. I just can't find anywhere for a price that I like. But excuse me. Excuse me. No, because I had read the blurb. I kind of just wanted this. I had this on my Amazon wish list. Not necessarily because I knew what it was about, just because I'd heard so many people say it was good that I needed it. And the blurb didn't help explaining the story. Like, I understand the blurb now that I've read the book, but I feel like when I hadn't read it, I was trying to read this fucking blurb, I was like, what the fuck? The amount of twists that kept coming at me. And then the end, I was just like, absolutely insanity. This was creepy, but not to the point that I was fully freaked out that I was actually scared for my life. You know, but it did leave me with a little bit of a tingle. My thoughts are, what the actual fuck? I had no idea what to expect from this book, but definitely not this. It kept getting weirder and weirder, constant twists. I think it would have been a higher rating if I didn't struggle getting into it. My tiredness probably had something to do with that, but I get it. But it took me an audiobook to get into it. Yeah, so I listened to this as an audiobook because it's on Kindle Unlimited, by the way, and it was one of those Kindle Unlimited books where you can get the free audiobook with it, and that's what I did, and it definitely helped me get through it a lot, especially through the beginning, because my brain was not absorbing the information into my brain. This is again one of those books that I filmed a reading vlog for that I'm going to post later when I have my exam, so again I'm not going to talk too much about it. But that was Iron Flame, and boy, this took me long to get to. So you know how I had those couple of days planned where I would just film and get these books done? Well, this definitely got in the way of that. I wanted to read this book in one of those 3 days. I knew that because I knew that everyone said this takes you so long to get through. So I was like, it's smart if I plan a whole day just to read this, because I feel like that's easy. Anyway, all I'm gonna say is I need the notebook. I need the next book, because I can't live just knowing this. It feels illegal to know this and not know what's gonna happen next. So then the last book that I read in February, which is also the only non-physical book that I read in February, is Buurt Supermens. Oh my god, I spoke Dutch. Ew! But this is also The Convenience Store Woman. You probably know that book. You've seen it probably around. If you follow Jake Edwards, he probably has read it, because I feel like that's just really his cup of tea. I had to read this for my Dutch class, obviously, because it's Buurt Supermens, not the English version. And this was on Next Story. So also I told my boyfriend, and then my boyfriend was like, yeah, he was like, yeah, I'll tell my friends so they'll like sign up so that you can get coin. I don't know what, I gave this a 2.75 because I feel like every book that I have to read for school, some of the magic of that book just gets fully sucked out. But since I did fully read it, I did count it towards my Goodreads reading goal. I've only actually fully finished like 2 books for school. Anyway, I read this for Dutch class, and it actually wasn't too bad. It wasn't anything crazy either, not something I would have picked up outside of class. And yeah, I gave it 2.75. And those were all the books that I read in February. I loved February in terms of a reading month. And if you're still watching, comment this little emoji here, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye.